everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm your host, Laura Swanson, a licensed clinical social worker here in the great state of New York. Gosh, I'm in a weird mood. Today is my daughter's first birthday. How exciting. She's taking a nap. I'm here recording this episode. Today we are here to help social workers social work. And that is the goal for today. We're going to dive into some social work stories, some conundrums, quandaries. I don't know if quandaries is actually a word, to be so honest, but that's what we're here for. Before we dive into the actual meat of the episode, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Let your social worker friend know about this podcast. Share it over lunch with your colleagues. Email it to your professor. I don't know. Just share it. Have fun with it. This has been as a resource and a tool for everyone, so I hope you can use it to help a fellow social worker as well. So we'll dive in today. Just to give you an overview, the issues that we'll be tackling would be a conflict of interest situation with a child protection worker, transitioning from direct to a non-public facing role, and being a new social workers. And kind of dealing with having not a lot of confidence, maybe some imposter syndrome. So those are the things that we'll be getting into. We're going to start off with the conflict of interest. So let's hear what Reddit user Beachwaves311 has to say. Hi, I'm looking for input or advice. Well, that's what we're here for, friend. I work as a CPS caseworker. My son recently got his teacher assignment for this year, and I found a family I had investigated in the past as in his class. I am really uncomfortable with this due to what happened with the case. I'm wondering if I should say something to the school. Will the school want proof? I can't provide proof due to HIPAA. I know that this is unfortunately what I signed up for. You never know when you're going to run into a client and the impact, blah, 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 it will have on you or your family. I just can't see how this will work. I won't be able to attend the class open house, go to any events for the class, and more pressing is the bullying that will occur. In the past, if I ever ran into a client at a school setting and they asked if I'm here for my kids, I would say no, it's work-related and never had an issue. This time, this doesn't seem to work. For reference, the parents threatened to kill me when I removed the child, and the child is not doing well mentally. Last time I saw the child also threatened to kill me with a gun and then pulled my hair. Any advice is welcome. First, I'm going to say this. When I read this first paragraph, I was just like, this person is totally out of bounds. Like, why in the world would they bring this to the school? We deal with this all the time. We are part of the communities that our clients live in. We will run into clients like, I'm not going to lie, my first thought was like, get over it. But then they went on to describe the actual situation, and the former child client was really going through it, and in that way, the parents also going through it and being threatening. It's tricky. As someone who has worked rurally and lives and works rurally currently, this is an issue that I think a lot of people end up facing. Even at my bachelor's level internship, I think there had been like a family advocate, some kind of case manager, and they went to the same church, or they were like a part of the congregation as a client. And that was something where I will say, when we first meet with clients, we have to talk about confidentiality. We have to talk about HIPAA. We have to go over those rules of the world of, hey, if you see me out and about, I'm not going to come up to you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to acknowledge your existence. And I do that because that's my job, because I respect your privacy. If you want to come up to me and say something, that's up to you. But just know that, please don't take it personally. Please don't be offended. This is just part of my duty as a professional to maintain that privacy and that confidentiality at all times. So just keep that in mind. I'm just simply I'm going to pretend that you're not there. Now, given the circumstances of this, if this was a real situation, there had been threats to harm, to kill, stuff like that, I can see the issue. I also, generally speaking, I will say this. If this was a very low stakes issue and maybe not child protective services involved, if this was a normal client-child situation, I think this would be very different. I think the child, this is my own personal experience, and you might have a very different opinion, but I think the child would be able to stay in the class perfectly fine, and I think you could just carry on business as usual and just not acknowledge anything to anyone. And and that's that. And that's that. But given that it's like particularly child protective services, and there was just like a lot of safety issues for the social worker in particular, like threats made to them, and then their child is in this classroom, and I'm basing my experience off of rural social work, where like every kid in the class knows whose parents belong to what kid, and blah 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 blah. Um, I can see how that would get dicey very quickly. Um, so yeah, I would agree. I, I probably, some of the advice that is being given here, which I think is interesting, is in many schools, you can request a change of class for your child without getting into all of the details. So just like call the admin and be like, hey, I would like my child to be transferred to a different classroom. I think that's a good option in this situation. This person responded saying, I called the school this morning and was told that they can't request a change without a reason. And so someone's like, then you can say you have a reason. Just say that you have a professional conflict of interest, that you are unable to provide details because it would violate HIPAA and your like ethical responsibility, and leave it at that. You don't have to give names of any of the people involved. You certainly cannot get into the reasoning, or else that would be an ethical issue, breaking confidentiality. But I think that's also very good advice. I do think, again, I'm thinking of my experience living rurally, working rurally. Your child, as they get older, is going to be a part of this person's class regardless, unless somebody moves or moves to different schools. But if they grow up in the same community, if they do blah, 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 like, they're going to see each other at some point. I'm just remembering, like, I don't know, the kids I went to a third grade with, I graduated with. Like, we all knew each other. It was a small class. Like, we could not escape each other. And so I do think at some point, again, you should not disclose any of this information about in the professional capacity to anyone. But this is also, I mean, a learning point for your own child to like, okay, how do we deal if like someone is picking on us at school or there is a bully? How do we deal with that? But with this particular situation, I understand just it is like easier to just like pull your child out of class, and it minimizes any potential harm or risks there. Because I'm also thinking safety reasons. I think it could get very iffy if then a former parents know that this is your child. Like, I don't like it. I don't like it. I understand the concern here. But yeah, I agree with the other advice that's given. Like, the school year hasn't started yet. Pull your kid out of class, transfer to another classroom, and you can tell administration that, like, no questions asked, in a way that's like very professional and maintaining confidentiality. Good to go. All right. Next one is from Kiki_crossing, transitioning from direct to non-public facing roles. In the research I've done, I've seen grants and research as like job opportunities for a transition. However, in all the job postings, they want prior experience. I've been doing solely direct client care for 10 plus years. I'm wondering if there's anyone who's made a similar career switch to those or other non-direct roles. If so, what do you do now and how did you get there? So I will say, I have not had this transition personally. I just want to have that as a caveat. These are just ideas straight off the dome. I will also say, my first initial thought is, you have 10 plus years of direct client care. That is important and valuable work, and that is a point for a lot of people where they want to get into something like leadership or management that is not client facing. And with that kind of experience, I think that's something that you're able to do. Like, with 10 plus years of direct client care, to be able to transition and kind of be like, I'd like to be part of like the management space or like admin in some way, I think that could work. Like, you got plenty of years in to like move up the ladder in that way. So I always think that's an option. My other thought is, do not get psyched out by prior experience requirements. Apply to the job anyways, because a lot of people say prior experience and then they take an opportunity away from themselves, and they could end up like being flexible, or seeing your experience does end up aligning with what they're looking for. And so, keep applying to stuff that you don't qualify for. Please. And who knows, maybe something can click and they realize, oh, actually this experience is a really good fit, or I could see how this would build on the experience that they already have. Awesome. In terms of like getting into research and grant writing, I think there are some really great grant writing programs. If you have a particular person at the organization you already work at that you want to like shadow or collaborate with, I would even inquire about that. I work as a therapist, as most of you know. I just started my own practice in July of this year. It's been a solid month and a half, and it's been glorious. But for a long time now, I have been working with one of my professors from my undergrad, and we do research together. So he's like the head researcher. I'm definitely more of like a research assistant, but when things are published, my name will be as a co-author, which is really exciting. But that's also something where like reaching out to maybe like universities or even like former professors or something to get more research experience, something like that, just like a little side gig to do on the side. That's more like continuing to build experience and not transitioning directly. I also think a lot of this is like how you frame the work that you're doing. I think if people are able to transition complete careers, you can transition within social work. That is the beauty of social work, is that it is a varied field. You can do so many things in this field, and it can all boil down to just like a lot of these few core skills and things that you can do. So options. There are options. If it would be easier for you, I would even talk to like a current boss or supervisor or executive director or whoever the head honcho is. Kind of like if you enjoy the place that you're working at, I mean, like, I really enjoy being here, but this role is not for me anymore. What's available? Where's an opportunity I can fit in so I can keep contributing to this place? And if there's not, then sure, we might have to look elsewhere. But I just want to say, like, you have solid experience, like 10 plus years. That's crazy. To me, there's all the foundations for being able to work into non-public facing roles. 100%. 100%. Okay. Moving on to one titled Being New. All right. Hey, social work peeps. I recently moved states and jobs. I was in a hospital in upstate New York, and now I've moved to a hospital in Chicago. Some background: I've been a social worker for the past 5 years. I've been a floor social worker, senior social worker, and even a supervisor. Okay, good job. I'm having a hard time with the transition. We use the same EMR, but the documentation is different, and I feel like I'm back to being a baby social worker, like my confidence has gone to shit. What are something that people have done to ease the transition and build that confidence back? Now, I'm going to say something that nobody likes to hear, especially if you are asking for advice. It takes time. It takes time. You're in a new job, in a different environment. Upstate New York versus Chicago. Different setting. It's a whirlwind, right? And I went from rural social work to then living in New York City. Like, that was insane. It does just like take time to get familiar with the community, with like the issues, with the actual like specific hospital system. Like, things just do operate differently in different hospitals, even if it's the same setting. I would say a big piece to any transition is community, finding solace in community. This has nothing to do with the actual job itself. But being able to connect with other people, connect with other professionals, befriend other social workers, those will be able to serve as like great mentors, just like as friends and supports. Having good relationships with your colleagues is going to be huge during a transition, because those are people that you can easily go to be like, what the heck is going on? Like, what is this? And they will be able to offer you that support and information without judgment and just like be there. I also think like that can be just a vulnerable moment. If you still have a supervisor or you're talking to a colleague, just to be like, like this has been really hard. Sometimes we maybe need a little bit of reassurance to let someone know you're doing great. Like this is, you're doing amazing. I also think to please always remember, it takes a long time to adjust to a new job, even if it is in the same setting, in a similar role. It's still different. It's still new. It's still a lot to get used to. I know people generally say it takes like at least 6 months. I think it takes longer. But you have to give yourself time, so much patience and gentleness. You are not a baby social worker. You already have the social work muscles that are there. But let me tell you, if you were to throw me into working at a totally different place, I would be lost. I'd be lost in the sauce. Because even in social work, there are so many different acronyms for things based on what kind of social work you're doing, and then based on the specific setting that you're in. Like there's a lot to learn, which is why there's specialties to things. Like it is a lot. It is a lot. I do think though, a big piece of this confidence wise, and this is something I buy into myself, is it will be like the energy that we come into it with. So if we act cool and confident, it'll feel cool and confident eventually, at least. It is one of those things where lean into that confidence that you had being a social worker in upstate New York, and like being able to visualize yourself in that space, behaving in a way that helps you feel confident. Things are running smoothly. The information. Really like visualize and internalize that. I do believe in the power of visualization when we can just like picture in our mind something that can very much be the reality. So I think that's really powerful. Again, I also just think like self-compassion and gentleness is huge. A big part of learning is also just allowing yourself to learn. Learning doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time. You might for a little bit have to be in that learner role where you're remembering, okay, I have my learning hat on because this is a new system, this is a new space. We are in this transition mode. But that's all that it is. You can even, get ahead of yourself and ask for feedback from other people. Say like, what things do you feel like I have gaps in like my knowledge or my skill? What things should I improve here, specific to this setting, specific to like a hospital in Chicago? Like, what's the need here that maybe my experience didn't fill, or something I need to refresh on, stuff like that. Because sometimes when we then it's also good
reassurance.
Sometimes, when people are like, oh, no, you're good, everything's all right. Or if they do offer feedback, it's never as bad as we think it's going to be. Usually it's very easy breezy stuff. But keep in mind, you are new. This is a new job. Just because it's social work, just because it's in a hospital, doesn't mean it's going to be super, super easy, no problem. So again, gentleness with yourself, while also like speaking life into yourself. Maybe we need some of those morning affirmations. Maybe we need some little positive notes on a sticky note on your desk, but it does get easier with time. I remember my first job post-grad, I was drowning, and I was just like, what the heck am I doing? I feel like a freaking imposter. I don't even know how to be a therapist. Why are people coming to me with their problems? I don't know what I'm doing. And it took me maybe like a year. It took me a year, and I found my rhythm, and I had just had so much confidence. I had so much confidence, and that just came with knowledge. That came with me talking with other therapists at the clinic I was working at. That came with me just like making a whole list of community resources, so I was more aware of what even existed, relevant things that were a part of my job, even just like getting into that routine of like saying good morning to the receptionist when I walked past them, like stuff that made the space feel familiar and not new, while also affirming to myself, I am still new and I am still learning. So kind of having that balance, the best of both worlds. So that's my advice for this Reddit user. Alright, everyone. It is a short-ish episode today. We went through a few different social work issues. I hope it was helpful. I know big things are happening in social work. I also know, there's a lot happening with the social work compact, which I do want to get into, but I'm going to be real, I'm not super well versed in it. It is something that I know bits and pieces of, but I don't have a lot of information on like pros and cons and like really what's going on. So if you're unfamiliar, I'll say this. The Social Work Compact is basically an interstate compact. I'm reading the website right now. It's swcompact.org. This additional licensing pathway will facilitate multi-state practice among member states and reduce the barriers to license portability. Right off the bat, I support it and I love it and I'm obsessed with it. And I think that we need it. This is something that I think multi-state licenses should always exist. I'm in the process of getting licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm currently licensed in New York. It's just a hassle to individually apply to every single state, especially when I lived in New York City and I would have to stop meeting with someone because they moved across the Hudson River to New Jersey, even though they still worked in New York. Like, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It makes me wonder why like, greedy, bad places, allegedly greedy, allegedly bad places like BetterHelp, are able to like operate in the way that they do. I don't understand it. It's allegedly predatory. But yeah, so if you are wanting national or interstate licensure for social work, you can check out their website, swcompact.org. So I think that's very interesting, something to look into, something to even advocate maybe in your own state, through your local NSAW chapter, whatever it is, see what's going on there. But anyways, I thought I'd put a little tidbit on there just because I saw a couple things on Instagram, I think, about updates with that, and I'm kind of out of the loop with it. I do just know that I support it. I'm going to be real, I still have to educate myself on the cons, and I will update you on that in a future episode. But for now, we are going to wrap it up there because I'm going to spend time with my baby on her first birthday, and I will see you next time. Bye.